I can put out one advertisement and it can go out to 30,000 eyeballs. If I go post that same piece of content, that same advertisement on my organic channel, 323 people are going to see it. And so, what game do you want to play here? 30,000 eyeball odds or 323 eyeball odds?
Welcome to ChiroX, where we talk about business growth for chiropractors. If you are a high-earning chiropractor aiming for that $1 million mark, then you know reaching more people is crucial. Today, we're diving deep with Dr. Travis Stewart, who is co-owner of Move Chiropractic in Boulder, Colorado, and has successfully built a seven-figure practice. He's revealing his exact blueprint for dominating patient acquisition using specifically Facebook ads. You'll learn how mastering this one lever can completely transform your business and grow faster than you ever thought possible. Get ready to discover the precise strategies that he used to go from bootstrapping his clinic during COVID to building a practice that is both growing and scalable. If you're interested in using Facebook ads to build a seven-figure practice, then this episode's for you. Let's dive right in. If you had to build $1 million practice from scratch today, what is the very first step that you would take to accomplish that?
Good question. First off, it's a question everybody asks, right? Everybody wants a seven-figure, like $1 million a year practice. I noticed that the title of this episode is going to say something about building $1 million practice and using Facebook ads and being able to scale your practice with marketing, which is something that I'm sure I'll talk about today. But everybody wants a seven-figure practice. I think it's a great threshold. It's a great aspiration or something to shoot for. And so if I was going to build $1 million practice from scratch today, first off, I would engineer it. I think that all too often, a lot of chiropractors go into practice without any sort of vision. And I mean super clear vision on the actual model and the offer that they're going to bring to the marketplace. And so they come out with these skills and this craft that they have with their hands that they spend a lot of money for. And they go into practice and they think that just being a chiropractor with a doctorate degree is going to attract the people that they want to serve. And I think that that's a false assumption. And so I would engineer my practice in a model that allowed me to generate the most amount of revenue per patient. And then I would work backwards. So $1 million practice breaks down to $83,333 a month. Okay, so in the chiropractic industry, your clients are called patients. And so what we would need to do is we would need to engineer our model and we would need to figure out through using someone smarter than you that's been in the industry for a long time to use industry standards to help you understand how many new patients that you would need per month, what conversion percentage you're likely to have with those new patients, and then based on the model and the offer that you have, how much each of those patients are going to be worth to your practice. And I would reverse engineer it using math to tell me exactly how many of those people would I need to pay me this amount of money in order to achieve this amount of revenue, and how long would it likely take me to get there. And so simple math, because I knew you were going to ask me this question, $83,333 a month in monthly revenue for a chiropractic practice with an LTV or an average case value, let's say, of $3,000 per conversion comes out to needing 28 new patient conversions a month, which means that let's use a 70% conversion rate on sales, which is pretty average. If you're below 70%, you need to work on your sales system. If you're above 70%, you're doing really well. But if you are converting at a 70% rate, that's generating 40 day ones a month. You need 40 day ones in order to get 28 conversions at a $3,000 average case value to get up to that $83,333 a month. Well, I just so happen to know somebody who's really good at Facebook ads. And so that is how I would start with my marketing. And the reason why is because it's controllable traffic and you're pretty much buying attention and real estate. And so we could use industry standards as well across the board to see how much money I'm putting into ad spend versus how many new patients that's going to generate me based on my geographic location, because every market is different. And so, based on my calculations here, if we were using a customer acquisition cost of about $190, which I would say is also a good CAC, if anywhere under 220 is a good place to be, especially if you're at like a $3,000 average case value, then you would need to spend $5,320 in your Facebook ad spend to generate your 40 new patients per month. And that would give you an LTV to CAC ratio of 15, essentially. And that is incredible. I would try to break it down as much as possible from a math standpoint and then hire and or create strategy that gave me actionable steps in each of the domains that need to be mastered in order for you to not only build but sustain $1 million practice. And so we could do all of those things and break it down through arithmetic, and we can have that blueprint. And then you get into practice and you get punched in the face, and everybody does. And so, what do you do when you get punched in the face? You know, like how adaptable are you? How malleable are you? And then I would make sure that I was allocating all of my resources to lead generation, lead nurture, my consultation or my day one, my conversion in my day two, my astonishing customer experience, which is my fulfillment and delivery, my retention, and then how do I build brand ambassadors that go out and become referral sources for my practice? Because you can break it down to math and you can get really good at direct response marketing and you can get really good at sales. But if you don't allocate a lot of your attention to becoming the best that you can in all of those domains and becoming a jack of all trades, then it's going to be really challenging to sustain this $1 million practice.
I'm glad you broke down the math because like it's one of the things I've done with a number of doctors as well, and it's one of my favorite things because sometimes I think that a light bulb goes off in their head when they realize that the numbers behind being able to build that type of practice actually isn't as obscene as they initially think it is. I was actually just recently on a consulting call with a client and we were talking about like what their vision was for their business, and I remember very distinctly them saying is like, "Oh, I really don't need like $1 million practice. Like if I could just make six figures and that would be fine." And I remember I asked her, I said, why not? Like, why not $1 million business? And because the answer is because she didn't believe she could do it. Because if she knew that she could do it, there wouldn't be any question as to whether she would want to do it or not. Because with $1 million, you can not only serve yourself, but you can serve a lot of other people. And you can help your friends, and you can help your family, and you can help your community, and you can do a lot with that kind of income. And something I want to tap into, which you briefly alluded to in terms of the Facebook ads piece of it, is that I've heard you say in the past to serve the market, not your message. And I'm curious as to like, one, what does that mean to you? And then two is like, what is it about Facebook ads that are so compelling to you? Or we'll just say meta ads for the nature of this conversation that like, why are you so gung-ho on those and why do you believe in them so firmly?
To answer your first question, it means to sell them what they want and then give them what they need over time. You know, I think as chiropractors, we come out of school and we're very strong in our philosophical stance. And we just spent 4 years in an echo chamber around people with common interest and common lexicon and common level of education. And we come out into the real world and we think that everybody wants to hear what we know instead of understanding that behavioral and consumer psychology is radically different. They want to know what they need to know to feel better right now. And so when I say to serve the market, not your message, it essentially means to direct your message or target your message directly to their condition and tell them what they need to know to compel them to take action to come into your home turf, and then use your processes to create more certainty and conviction in the individual that you can actually help them solve a problem and up to the point to where they're actually willing to invest in a corrective care program. And then you can use that next 12 to 16 weeks essentially to educate them thoroughly on the premise and the principles of chiropractic and how chiropractic can become a staple in their long-term healthcare journey. But you don't have to do that in your marketing. You don't have to do that in your organic content. You don't even have to do that in your day one and day two process. What they want to know is, can you help me? Do I trust you? And how much is it going to cost? And that's really the only questions that you have to answer. And as long as you can answer those and provide them with more perceived value than the amount of money you have on that financial reporting sheet, then they're in. And then from that point forward, you can roll out the red carpet per se and kind of bring them closer to the light.
Can we linger on this for a second? I know you actually just
Sure.
recently went to events at Alex Armodi's headquarters in Las Vegas, and I'd be willing to bet there might have been some conversation about understanding that differentiation between, I guess, value and price. Because like that, at the end of the
Mhm.
day, I think that's, as you obviously know sales very well, is like that's really the conversation that we're having is like when you're talking to somebody and potentially trying to convert a new patient or to get them on board. A big part of it is that showing them the value, right? And there's a lot of things we can do to show the value or decrease the risk. I'm curious as to like, were there any big takeaways that you got from maybe that event or things you learned in that environment or from that community that a chiropractor could take away in terms of increasing sales?
Yeah, that's good. First off, I like the quote, in the absence of value, cost is the only consideration. And so what that means is that if you're not able to show them what's called customer surplus, which means that they're going to receive more value than the price that they're paying or the amount of money that they're investing, then the only thing that they're going to consider in order to make their decision is the cost of the purchase. And so one of the things that I can say that I learned from them, at the event that I went to, but also that I've learned along the way, maybe two different things, I'll break it down. So the first thing is like value is not always listed on a sheet. We always talk about value stacking and we talk about, creating these corrective care plans that you're able to weave in all of these things that increase the perceived value of what they're about to buy. But what I received when I went to the Hormozy event was this incredible amount of value in the experience that they provided. Where if you were to ask me at the end of the day, like, what did you get out of that experience? I might not have been able to list off in line item or itemize out why the experience was so valuable. But because every detail was so tended to by them and their team, it was the most valuable experience that I've ever been to. And we paid $10,000 to go. And I can't even tell you like my four tactical primary takeaways. Value is hard to quantify, and I do think it's a lot of times in kind of the eye of the beholder almost, or like, based on the individual that's sitting in front of you, like where are they finding value? And I think you have to understand, again, from a consumer psychology standpoint, that everybody is going to perceive value slightly differently. There are a lot of people that come into our office that value the personal touch, that value the amount of time that we spend with them in the consultation. And then we have high performing entrepreneurs that come in and they value how efficient we are, that we don't have to spend that much time in the consultation to identify the problem that they have, to lay out the exact solution, get them to the table, and get them out of the practice in 3 minutes. And so you have to somehow figure out a way to formulate a system and a process that's able to exemplify huge amounts of value for a majority of the population. As an entrepreneur, you have to systematize things out and kind of spread things out to where you have multiple ways of adding value into your experience to where you're blowing away every person that comes into your office.
It feels like the five love languages, if you're familiar with that book and that concept. It's like essentially understanding what somebody else's like love language or what ultimately they believe is valuable. Like for one person, it could be the actual physical touch. For another person, it could be quality time. For another person, it could be acts of service. It sounds very similar in terms of understanding that with your patients as well and understanding what their value drivers are. And then and I can imagine you could probably figure it out pretty quickly and probably just like keep some very basic notes on something like this. If someone's a high earning entrepreneur and they value time more than anything else because it's their scarcest resource, understanding that from the forefront could be a really easy way to add a lot of value to a patient and better outcomes down the road, obviously.
Yeah. I think a lot of times there are people that get really good at sales. And what that means is they get really good at persuasion and influence and communication. But I think that there is also an intangible quality that comes from that. It's the ability to read people. And I don't mean like read people as in like making judgments about the person, but like reading their body language, understanding their tone, being able to mold and adapt yourself to match their tone. And it comes back to How to Win Friends and Influence People. And then there's a book by Robert, what's his name? Robert
Baldini.
Cialdini. Yeah. Just like taking some of those concepts that you can start to act on in your daily life until you have the amount of reps necessary to know like when you're feeling this energy from this individual, you need to modify your process just a little bit in order to accommodate for their needs. And if you can do that, you're going to blow that individual away and you're going to increase your conversion levels because you're increasing your ability to persuade and influence by decreasing friction. And that's what a lot of sales is. Most objections that you get at the end of the financial delivery is something that you should have overcome 15 steps ago. So if you can figure out how to do that along the way, I think that you're going to be way more successful as a chiropractor.
Yeah, influenced by Robert Cialdini and his other follow-up book. I don't know it off the top of my head, but are like a must-read for basically any business owner. They're books I've read multiple times just because of there's something that just never go away and they're so valuable. I think is a vastly underappreciated and undervalued skill that most people forget about, and it's just being easy to work with. Is like people vastly underestimate how great it is to just be the kind of person that's easy to work with and doesn't complain or make a big deal out of things and can be a little bit more free flowing. Is like, I think there's so much value in that. And like people appreciate that so much and can go so far. At its core is just like being, I guess, a kind human. But yeah, something I definitely want to tap into with you though, is you advocate a lot for running ads, social ads, Facebook, Meta, Instagram. And I'd be curious as to why. Why do you advocate for those so much? And what is it about them that makes them so effective?
Yeah, good question. That goes back to my story. I started my practice during COVID. August 6th of 2020 is when I graduated chiropractic school. I started my practice September 15th of 2020 in Boulder, which was one of the most locked down and regulated areas in the country. We didn't have the opportunities to go out and do boots on the ground in-person networking. We knew right away that it was sink or swim. And we didn't have a lot of options. Fortunately, we were led to dive into paid social media ads. And we hired an agency and they helped us and they got our ads launched pretty quickly. And we were actually seeing some traction until we weren't. And so we moved on to another agency and kind of a similar story happened where we had some decent success month one, month two, and then the leads started to dry up and we did it again. And so we kind of had the agency hamster wheel, which is what we kind of call it now, which is essentially where you hop into one agency out of desperation because all of your leads have dried up and you need new patients tomorrow. And you experience some small level of success during the first initial months. And then that dries up pretty quickly. And then out of desperation, because you need new patients tomorrow, you hop in with another agency that has the next cool thing or the next messaging or whatever their thing is, because everybody has their thing. And you do that over and over again until you finally realize that there's a better way. And that's exactly what happened to us. And so by the time we were with our fourth agency, we had already started to synthesize as much marketing information as possible. And I initially started off by reading Russell Brunson, and I read his entire trilogy Secrets. It's behind me right now. But I started with Expert Secrets, and then I went through the other two books that are in the trilogy. And by the end of reading those three books, I was helping coach our marketing agency on how to get more leads and how to get better leads for us. Like I was literally having calls and I was helping them recreate our funnel system. And so finally, Ryan, who's my former office manager, now business partner in Making Moves, the Cairo Ads Academy, he grew up a gamer. And so he was pretty tech savvy just naturally. And so we finally got to the point where it was like, dude, we were actually together. We had kind of gone on like a mastermind weekend together and we actually had a call with our marketing agency, I remember, and we were like pulling out the books and going through them and we were like, we need to do this, we need to do this, we need to put more into the cold traffic so that we can increase our current warm bucket so that we can actually have a retargeting audience so we can spend less to acquire more leads. And the lady was like mind blown and she was like, okay, so how do we do that? And like we were having to like coach her on that. As soon as we got off that call, we turned to each other and we were like, we could do a better job than she is right now. Like if we just knew how to actually manage the meta platform landscape. At that moment, we just decided, we are like, you know what, we're going to go back and we're going to grab every resource that we can to learn how to do this on our own. And so
Well,
we did.
I was just going to ask, why were they drying up earlier on? Do you know? Is this part of the? I'd like to know.
You know, it's hard to know, but I think the reason why we've had so much success with the way that we craft our Facebook ads is that it's very cookie cutter creative. And so in April of 2021, whenever the iOS 14.5 update happened, or whatever it was, whenever they changed the privacy policy, essentially all targeting turned to creative targeting. So before you had targetability based on demographics and psychographics. And mainly demographics, so like what people actually look like. I mean, you could do some crazy layered targeting on the exact person that you're looking to get your message to. Well, now it's all creative targeting. So all of the algorithm and how it actually pumps out content to the audience is based on what the audience watches or what they're interested in. And that's just based on what they watch and what they're interested in their feed. And so now you have to actually craft a targeted message with creative that can be shown as a similar interest to the wider audience that you're looking to serve or that you're looking to attract. Whereas then it was all targeting. So people were just crushing it on Facebook. It was Facebook arbitrage, dude. It was the Wild West. People were making crazy amounts of money. Well, as soon as they flipped that switch for that iOS 14.5, dude, businesses went out of e-commerce businesses went out of business overnight. It was crazy what happened there. But I think that has a lot to do with it because, from my understanding, and this is another thing that Hormozy said at the seminar, was that most direct response marketing agencies do just enough to not get fired. Their entire business model is pretty much around doing just enough to not get fired. With the Facebook marketing landscape, they were creating cookie cutter creative that looked exactly like everyone else's. Most of it was still images. If it wasn't, it was just B-roll video with text overlay. And it didn't do anything for identifying or hooking people's attention, identifying a problem, educating them on the problem, offering them a new and unique solution, giving them social proof, and then giving them a call to action. And that's how you tell a story. And that's how you compel someone to act, which is what direct response marketing is. So, because of that, I don't know the phenomena on why agencies work for 1 to 2 months. I have no idea. I don't know if it's because they're just plugging in a new creative system into a market that hasn't seen those style of graphic advertisements, or if Facebook actually favors new campaign structures. But that's how it always works. And if you talk to chiropractors and you ask them, they will agree and confirm that the first 2 months typically far outperform any of the months following. And so what we did is we figured out how to create a creative structure that did exactly just that. We were able to target people, we were able to hook their attention. We were able to identify the problem that they have, which is what you need to do. You give them, sell them what they want, and then give them what they need over time. So, are you currently experiencing this condition? Does it feel like this, and this? If it does, it's probably because of this, and this. And if that's you, we have a solution here, and it's really simple. It's 3 steps, and it's this, and this. And if you want to experience that solution, just like John did, who first came in with this, that, and the other that they couldn't do, and now they're doing this, that, and the other that they can do. They've increased their quality of life, and it's only taken us a few weeks. If you want to do that, click the link below and get started today. I'll see you on the inside. I can't wait to serve you. And so we were just able to create or craft this ad structure that could literally be plugged into any model. We started running that for our practice and we grew exponentially. We were like teetering on the edge of like $15,000 months, and we were scratching and clawing to like get above that because it was so challenging in the COVID landscape here. And as soon as we took it into our own control and we built out a fully equipped CRM that had all of our automation sequences in place, that we were able to manage on our own, that we had great landing pages, we made everything as frictionless as possible. And then we were able to craft really awesome creative that was targeted at unique and specific conditions. We were able to compel them through those creative content pieces, and then we were able to place them properly in the Meta platform. Our practice exploded. And, we hit our first $70,000 month within just a few months. So we had gone from averaging $12,000 to $15,000 a month to now breaching over $70,000 a month just by taking Facebook ads in-house. And so that's why I'm such a huge advocate for it, is because it was literally transformative. It was the one lever that I can still to this day look back and say, that's the reason why I'm standing here on this podcast with you today.
Would you say that it still feels that way in terms of the how strong of a pull that lever still has compared to what it was as to what it is today. Is it still that powerful? Is it just a matter of understanding the nuance of the platform and being able to have new creative every month or 2 months or whatever it is?
I do, yeah. And I actually feel strongly about it for different reasons. And I feel strongly about it now because, first off, there's three reasons why I think that running your own Facebook ads is the move in today's business landscape. And first off, it's quality control. Second of all, it's margins. And third of all, it's sustainability. And I think for all three of those reasons, it is just as powerful today as it was then. Now, obviously, at that time, it had a greater impact on my life to scale than running Facebook ads in-house does for me now. It's just part of our system. Then it was what, allowed me to scale. I think that as long as you know how to craft a message and you know how to put it in front of the right people and you know the difference between brand awareness and direct response marketing, which is what we're talking about here, and you have a really well equipped CRM and a follow up system, and you have a good sales process, then it's the highest leverage traffic controller that you can have because I was in Palm Springs, California last week with my family, and I was hanging out with another family, and we were on the golf course, and I was getting leads and bookings on my phone. I still have them come through to my phone, even though the quantity is much higher, just as a reminder of how grateful I am to have new patients booking on my calendar from an ad that I shot 3 weeks ago that I don't have to lift a finger to do. I think it's one of the more powerful things that you can implement inside of your practice as long as you do it well. Another thing that I learned at the Hormozy event was something that the head of marketing got up on stage and actually said, which was a great confirmation for me. He said, all roads lead to in-house. And he was just specifically talking about Facebook marketing. They actually advise that you find somebody to work on your SEO and your pay-per-click and your web design. But they also agree that the Facebook ads platform, Meta platform as a whole, generates 98% of their revenue from advertisements. 98%. I think in 2020, they had done like $49 billion in revenue. $47.5 billion of that revenue came from advertising. They spent $40 billion on research and development to make the usability of their Facebook ads platform as easy as possible for small businesses to run their own ads because they generate 98% of their revenue from advertising. So they want everybody to be able to run their own ads. They don't want this to be consolidated by conglomerate agencies. Every small business in America to be running their own ads on the Meta platform. It's that easy. And so, if you get the right guidance and you learn how to set up all of these systems and processes in place, which is not that hard, especially now with software and AI, then all you have to do is know how to plug and play. You got to know how to read the data, and then you got to know how to adapt to that data. So it really just comes down to solving problems. And we're natural problem solvers as chiropractors. That's literally what we do. People come in, they have a problem, we identify the problem, and we solve the problem. It's the same exact thing with the Facebook landscape. All you're doing is taking that same set of skills and you're just transferring it over to something else. And if you have somebody that can show you exactly what to do, how to see it, and what to do if you see this, then from that point forward, you have the leverage, the quality control, the scalability, you have the creative freedom, you have the ability to protect your brand message and your brand identity instead of outsourcing that to a marketing agency that you're just a number to. You get to tell the story that you want to tell to attract the people that you want to attract. And that's why I think it's the most powerful platform to play on.
I love seeing you get fired up about this. And it makes sense if you just understand the first principles of what a social media platform is. Their ability to target and to run good ads is actually advantageous to them because the more ads that people pay for to run on the platform, the more money they make. So it's very advantageous for them to support small businesses to do it in a very effective way and to have as much data as possible to do so. And so fun to see you get fired up about this. I'd be curious though as to where you believe organic plays into this, because like just to give people a little bit of, I guess, understanding or concept around like social media in general is like back to my point about first principles is that generally speaking, when platforms first come out, is that organic always does very well, generally speaking, like what you saw with TikTok, because their goal at that moment is to get as many users on there. Once it becomes saturated, then they start selling ads, because at that point it becomes an ability to monetize it and to sell ads and things on the platform. But I still think that there is space for organic. I don't think it's an either or. I think, in my opinion, it's a both and. But I'd be curious as to like what your thoughts are on how organic plays into it.
I agree with that. That's an interesting thought exercise, is to like think about how these platforms are running the same playbook. It's the give to ask ratio. So like at first, it's all give, which means that like if you're using some of these platforms, such as currently YouTube Shorts and LinkedIn Shorts, their give to ask ratio is crazy. So they're sending your content out everywhere. And so your ability to grow is exponentially faster on those new platforms than it would be on Facebook and Instagram. And so right now, the algorithms are going crazy on YouTube Shorts and LinkedIn Shorts, kind of similar to early TikTok. I don't know that anything will ever beat early TikTok, but yeah, so like once they essentially attract an audience because of the casino style rewards that they're giving out by giving your content to everyone, then they play the monetization playbook, which is essentially adding in all of the advertising, and then their give to ask ratio goes down. So then instead of you getting 18 organic posts per one advertisement, now you're getting 3 organic posts per one advertisement. And so that's where they start to make all of their money. But yes, I do believe that organic does play a big role in this. And mainly, I think it acts as a landing page. And so a lot of times, what you'll see is that people will see your paid advertisement, and maybe you haven't built enough trust, but you've sparked some curiosity. And so what they'll do is, instead of just clicking off the advertisement because they're not interested in your offer, they'll actually just click your profile page. And so when they do that, they go to your profile page and they try to see if you're legitimate, and they look at some of your posts. And so that's where you have the opportunity to, instead of just giving direct response based advertisements, you actually get to put some value based content out there, which is where you're giving value away for free without any expectation for anything in return. And so, that's, I think, when we're talking about a fast growth method, if I was to start a practice tomorrow to build $1 million practice as fast as possible, I would lean heavily into paid advertising. But if I'm thinking 10 and 15 years down the line, I'm doing both. I'm doing paid advertising and direct response advertisement, which gives me a higher velocity of return, so that I can inject as much cash right now as I want to. And as long as I have a positive return on that investment, let's say it's even just 3 to 1. If it's 10 to 1 or better, keep pulling that lever until the machine dries up. If it's 3 to 1 or better, then just ride that out. That means that you're getting $3,000 per every $1,000 in marketing that you're spending. And if you have a really great sales process and you're giving people a prepaid discount, paid in full option, then you're getting upfront cash injection that you can immediately put back into your marketing so that you can grow faster. However, if velocity of return is out of the question and we're just talking about the long-term play, I think brand is highly valuable for businesses. Now, I don't know that it's as valuable for service-based businesses, local brick and mortar service-based businesses, just because of the amount of information and the way that the algorithm now serves content to people is like it's almost international. Like I'm getting content on my feed from all over the place. It's not necessarily like location based anymore, but there's a great opportunity to build a brand and be able to share value with your community and be able to demonstrate your expertise for free through your organic social media. And then you're just going to start to attract all of those people that aren't ready to buy from your direct response marketing. And over time, you're going to grow your following little by little. And what I like about this is that you don't have to be a content creator to have success on social media. And that's especially true if you're using paid advertising. Because if you're using paid advertising, then you're literally buying attention. If you're not using paid advertising, you have to build your audience over time, which means you have to be extremely consistent at posting once a day minimum for X amount of months until something finally catches traction and you gain X amount of followers overnight. Otherwise, you're just going to be gaining, 10, 12, 15. It's very incremental growth. And the amount of eyeballs that you're able to reach with one content unit is far less than if you're putting money behind it. We can not create content for weeks right now, and I can put out one advertisement and it can go out to 30,000 eyeballs. If I go post that same piece of content, that same advertisement on my organic channel, 323 people are going to see it. And so, what game do you want to play here? 30,000 to 1 odds, or like 30,000 eyeball odds, or 323 eyeball odds? We're targeting a geographical location and sending it out to a huge amount of people, and that is giving us a great return on our time, our energy, and our money. I hope that explained what you
Yeah.
were looking for.
Yeah, you nailed it, man. And you bring up the classic, I feel like, business dilemma of you rather pay with your time or you pay with your money. And that's really what we're talking about here is that exactly what you said about the organic side of things. And my favorite way to attack this problem, or really any marketing problem for the most part, is I always talk about the hybrid approach. Is everybody's like, should I do paid ads or should I do organic or should I do SEO? On some level, you're probably going to want to do a bit of all of it. And it's all kind of
The
like,
answer is yes.
yeah, exactly. There's a very much a hybrid approach to everything related to marketing, which is obviously everything I talk about. It's like you're either paying with your time or you're paying with your money, because the time it's going to require you to put into creating content and posting. The last time I heard, I was at the Texas Chiropractic Association, and there was a guy there that gave a keynote who's like an expert in personal branding, and he's worked with some of the biggest companies in the industry. And he was talking about how just to even like be in the playing field for your content to be seen is at a bare minimum. Let's talk Instagram or Facebook for a second. At a bare minimum, you have to be posting at least 3 reels a week. And I think it was like 10 to 15 stories a day. Bare if you're not paying for it, which tells me is like, and there's nothing wrong with doing less than that. Or like you said, is like, I love the analogy you used about using it as a landing page. I think it's a phenomenal way to use it. It doesn't mean be really lame or cheap or lazy about your content, because there is a brand element to it and people want to look at it. And it does represent some form of trust if it looks decently good on the platform. So it's like a really phenomenal landing page. Unless you want to become the expert on the platform and be really, really good at social media and content creation, your other option is you can do paid. You talk about it as if it's easy, and it is because you know how to do it and you understand the funnel and the system around it. Let's say somebody listening to this podcast is like, okay, I understand meta ads are valuable. This is a system I would like to do in my business. I know nothing about it. I wouldn't even know where to begin. What are maybe like some of the essentials that they would need to make this at least semi-successful if it was something they wanted to dive into and they just wanted to start learning about it?
Yeah. So just a few essentials. We have 208 chiropractors that we've taught to run their own in-house Facebook ad system in the past 12 months. So 208 entrepreneurs, chiropractors, practice owners that are just as busy as you, that have just as many responsibilities as you, that are getting outsized returns on their Facebook ads and have better margins because they decided to take it in-house. There's a few essentials that I think are the most relevant to the success of running your own in-house Facebook ads. And the first one is a great CRM. So you have to have a really good CRM. If you don't know what a CRM, it's a client relationship manager, and it's something like Go High Level or HubSpot or something like that. You have to have somewhere to organize all of your leads. You have to have somewhere to communicate with all of them. And you have to have a pipeline where, depending upon where they are in your process or what's called your client journey, they are treated differently with an SMS or email automation sequence. The next thing that you need is a really great follow-up process. So either you and your team, and we train everybody how to do this, but you have to be really effective and proficient at following up with your leads. Speed to lead is extremely important, and that's the amount of time that it takes you to actually call the individual once the information comes through. And then you also have to have a really good framework on how to actually work through your initial phone call or your discovery call. That call is a sales call. And I don't care what anybody else says. They can call it a connection call. They can call it a discovery call. You can call it whatever you want, but it's a sales call. And essentially, you have to identify that there's a problem. You have to display your own expertise and the unique selling proposition that your office has. And then you have to compel them through a possible solution and then actually get them booked on your calendar. And you have to remember that they're sacrificing their time, their kids, and something on their schedule in order to come into your office. So you're literally selling them on all three of those resources: their time, their energy, and their money. It's a sales call. So you got to get really good at that. The last, third, and final piece would be a great sales process. In order to have a really successful in house marketing system, you need to have a great sales process. And that sales process also has to be just as methodical and has to have just as an effective framework, if not better, than your first phone call. And so you have to be able to create rapport with them. You have to be able to identify the problem that they came in with. You have to be able to identify their chronicity and the severity of their issue. You have to be able to compare the chronicity or how long their problem has been going on versus the amount of time that it's going to take you to solve it. You have to understand what kind of life effect it's having. So, like, how is this actually affecting their day to day and quality of life? And then you have to actually build the bridge between where they are and where they want to be, the aspirational character or the aspirational goals that they have. And then throughout that process, you have to get them to understand why what you found in your examination is causing the current symptoms that they have. And then, with certainty and conviction and a transference of belief, you have to be able to deliver your corrective care program and deliver your financials in a way that gets them to invest their time and energy and money into the product and service that you're delivering inside your office. And if you could do all three of those things well, you can crush it with Facebook ads. Because, like we said, running Facebook ads has never been easier. So we help people get those systems in place and make sure that all of that is airtight. A lot of times, we're revealing parts of their business that they never even knew that they were struggling with, and we're just the marketing guys. And so I think that just kind of goes to show, like, how many of these domains are intertwined. Marketing is inseparable from sales, it's inseparable from the fulfillment. Like, all of those things have to be intertwined, which is why I think it's important to do some of this stuff on your own, because you got to learn it at a high level, even if you're going to outsource it.
Yeah, I can safely say from my own experiences doing a lot of this marketing stuff as well, is that the deeper and deeper I get into this world, the more I realize is that as much as I call myself a marketer, I'm often so much more than that, strictly out of sheer requirement to be able to understand and have higher level conversations with doctors and clinics and to understand where the actual constraint and the bottleneck of the business is, because like more often than not is like that's often a very small piece of the pie of the bigger issue. And I'm sure you see this day in and day out with so many of the clinics and practitioners that you work with, which really leads me to, I guess, my final question. And it would be really is like, what's one like core principle or aspect of building $1 million practice that you think that every chiropractor needs to know? Because I'd be willing to bet of all the people that you've helped maybe set up their meta ads and their Facebook and their Instagram ads and talking through those marketing conversations, I'd be willing to bet that there's probably deeper issues or lessons to be learned that I think a lot of people could probably take away from this. So I'm curious, from your experience of building your own practice and also talking to these other clinic owners, is like, what is that one maybe principle or aspect that you think that all docs should know in order to build that practice?
I think it's the mindset dichotomy that occurs between the servant's heart and the entrepreneur's hand. And the people that I see that succeed in practice and succeed in the chiropractic business space are those that are very strong in their entrepreneurship. More often than not, they're not even great chiropractors, because I think it is actually more advantageous when building a successful business worth building in the chiropractic space to be a great entrepreneur and a great strategist and a great problem solver and great at influence and communication than it actually is on patient care. Most people don't know the difference between a great chiropractor and a good chiropractor, or a great chiropractor and a bad chiropractor. But they know how they feel when they walk into your office, and they understand the value that is provided in a customer experience. We're in the age of information right now where people get to make their choice on where they spend their money, their time, their energy, and attention more than ever before. And so when they come in to your office, all of those intangible and unquantifiable aspects about your business, I think lead to the patient or client either having a great experience in your office or a poor experience in your office more than the 3 minutes they spend on your adjusting table. And I know that a lot of people would argue with me on that, but most of those people are the people that spend all of their time, learning and trying to perfect their craft. I think that if you break your business down into 6 or 7 domains and you start to allocate your resources into all of those areas, just like we mentioned, lead generation, lead nurture, consultation, conversion, adjusting and fulfillment, retention, and then creating those brand ambassadors and referral systems, what you'll see is only one of those domains is fulfillment or delivery of care. The other domains are actually entrepreneurial in nature because they take strategy and they take maybe not a pursuit of mastery, but certainly a pursuit of excellence. And so if you devote yourself to excellence in all 6 or 7 of those domains, depending upon how you want to segment your marketing, then I think you can build a $1 million practice and beyond. And I think that's the goal. It's not just to build the $1 million practice, it's to build the $1 million practice without sacrificing your health or your family as well. And I think that most people have the skills and the work ethic to build the $1 million business or the $1 million practice. But do they have the skills and the leadership qualities to sustain the $1 million business? I think that's where the line is drawn. It's like we're in the leadership business, and you have to lead your patients just as well as you lead your team. And you have to lead your team just as well as you lead your patients. And if you can learn to lead by displaying excellence in all of those domains, then I think you can actually build a business that scales you out of it. And a lot of people don't want to hear that, especially chiropractors, because their servant heart drives their decisions. And they think that because I'm a chiropractor, I must devote my life to this profession and I must stay hunched around that table for the entirety of it. But there are other ways to serve. And so, if you truly want to build a big business, something special, then become good at all of those things and dedicate yourself to excellence on all of them. And then work on and develop your skill of leadership so that you can teach that across your entire team until eventually I think the kind of upper echelon of success is actually walking into your practice and being an employee of it. And your practice and your business is operating and running at such a high level without you being there. And that's what I aspire for. At first, I wanted to serve with these for the entirety of my career. And now I'm to the point where I want to serve with this so that I can maintain this and give it to, my 14-month-old son that was just born. And things have restructured and they've reshaped for me, but I think it's going to lead to me being a better and more successful entrepreneur over time.
Yeah, I can safely say from a handful of doctors that I've talked to is that generally speaking, for the most part, most of them almost always reach a point where they don't necessarily always want to be using their hands day in and day out. So maybe early on, I feel like most of the doctors I've seen don't. And if you get stuck having to use your hands later on, what I find is that a lot of those doctors just end up resentful and in a lot of ways unhappy. Dr. Travis, where can people find you? What's your plug?
So, making moves underscore Kairos is the business page for the Kairos Academy. It's making moves as well. I have a podcast called The Arena, it's formerly called Making Moves. You can find me there as well. And then my personal page is Travis underscore the chiropractor.
I just literally put this all together. So the arena, Teddy Roosevelt, your son's name,
Yep,
Theodore. You're
that's right.
you're a big Theodore fan, aren't you? Love
Big
it.
Theo fan. I was very inspired by Teddy Roosevelt early on. I loved The Man in the Arena. I think there's not a better speech to depict the chiropractic entrepreneurial journey. It's lonely in here, but also people tend to cast stones of judgment, and they think that you should practice this way, or you should say these things, or you shouldn't say these things. It's the gladiators inside the arena that are marred by blood, by dust, by sweat, and by tears who really have to say. And they're the ones that are doing the virtuistic work instead of just virtue signaling. So, yes, that is exactly where the arena came from.